want to talk about the ICC and the pressure that has been put on South Africa. And you can also speak on your opinion on the ICC wanting to arrest Putin for war crimes, as people like George W. Bush, Joe Biden, who's president, they walk free. And I just want to get your general thoughts on this, because I saw this earlier today and this caught my eye. And it said ICC arrest warrant for Putin, a big dilemma for South African government. So I will just read a both here. I'm not going to get to the whole article here. South Africa said on Wednesday that international arrest warrant for Russian President Putin had complicated matters for the country ahead of a BRICS summit. So they have a BRICS summit that they are hosting in August, and now you have the West that is trying to pressure South Africa to comply with the ICC warrant. And now, as predicted, South Africa is not really happy about the West and these hypocrites telling them what to do with their country. So I'm gonna play this clip, and I want your general thoughts on this story.
The possible.
This was covered by Breakthrough News. Let's play the video, and I want to get your thoughts on it.
Getting into the issue of the possible visit to South Africa by the Russian president, does the ANC regret not moving ahead with the process of initiating the withdrawal from the ICC, because that was the intention after the embarrassment of the al-Bashir saga?
I would imagine that that was a mistake not to move. I am one of the people who's convinced that we should have moved out of the ICC quicker and have nothing to do with it, because it will talk about arresting Putin, but don't talk about criminals who should be in the ICC, who destroyed Libya, who are continuing to destroy Palestine, who destroyed Iraq, who destroyed Afghanistan, who can give a long list. Those people are not pursued by the ICC. All of a sudden, you must arrest the minister of, the prime minister, the president of Russia. I think we should not be in the ICC.
So, as you guys see, the ICC has lost a ton of credibility. But Fiorella, what's your general take on this story and the reaction to West and South Africa?
Yeah, so first of all, the United States took itself out of the ICC because they didn't want to be charged with what they did in Iraq and their war on terror. And so they basically, that to me was just like obviously losing credibility then, and now trying to focus on the evil Vladimir Putin is just pretty much, again, it's just projection, it's hypocrisy. And I do think it's really great what we're seeing here in the African continent as a whole, what we saw in Burkina Faso with the ousting of the French, what we're seeing here, this rise of pan-Africanism. And I think it's great that South Africa is really following this trend, because it's not hard to believe that the leadership of Africa and the people of Africa are sick of U.S. intervention, because when the U.S. offers their help, and this is where I have a problem with people who want to equate China or even Russia with the Soviet Union having this close partnership with South Africa and ending the apartheid, right? And so this relationship has been a long one, because this has been a relationship in terms of ending any sort of colonialism. And Lavrov has said it many times, and other officials in Russia have said it many times, that the West is still trying to keep a neo-colonialist approach to Africa. And that is something that they have largely criticized, and a lot of people feel the same way. So with this, the ICC, push to incriminate Vladimir Putin, it's just the utmost level of hypocrisy, because as you mentioned, Libya is a huge one. Africans are not going to forget Libya. I mean, the U.S. went in there and created the biggest slave trade market. And you want to talk about pursuing Vladimir Putin, well, you'd have a long list of others that would be pursued far before. And that's what they're saying. And this is coming from people of the continent who really understand that, because there's something, I think, to really living under U.S. hegemony and having seen your country and your people go through that, to hear the West tout themselves as this moral virtuous sort of figure that is just that knows that has never done any harm, and that, Russia and the East and China, they're all dictators, and Assad and all of this, they're just the evil ones, is really rich. And I think the people of Africa are never going to forget what happened to Libya. They're never going to forget what the U.S. did in the Middle East. They're never going to forget the fact that even till this day, the West continues trying to plunder the continent of its resources the same way they're doing to Latin America, and the same way that's their intent, because you have the most resources in the continent of Africa. You have lithium, you have copper, you have gold, you have everything. And why then is the African continent full of poverty when they're the richest continent? And that's the question that a lot of people in the global South have been asking themselves. And I think this moment in history with the push towards multipolarity is what we're seeing, that thought take rise and take hold and say, you know what, we need to ditch dependence on the West. We need to hold our own. We need to build ourselves up. And we've been focusing a lot of our work on RT on Africa pretty much, and what's been going on there. So it's really important to follow that, because there's so much we don't know about Africa as Westerners, because we don't talk about it in the same way, right? And it's just been criminal what's been going on. So I'm really happy to hear that and know that that thought process is extremely popular among the people of several countries in the continent.
Yeah, absolutely. And you could not be more correct when you say there need to be more focus on Africa. We cover Africa a lot. Obviously, you guys at Convo Couch and your report on RT focus on that as a lot. I know it's personally, like, especially among the U.S. left, there's a lot of talk about imperialism. Like, everyone talk about the war on terror. You know what I mean? Everyone talk about the Iraq war, but people don't talk about Somalia. People don't talk about Yemen. People don't talk about Libya. Because if you do, that will lead you down the conclusion that the Democratic Party is irredeemable, because they were complicit with that, with the Republican Party as well. But another great point is that Africans are not falling for this propaganda anymore. There was a study that I covered a few weeks ago that they was asking thousands of people from all these different countries these questions about the United States and China, and it showed that Chinese propaganda is significantly more influential than United States propaganda. Now, the take you have from that is not that Chinese propaganda is great; it's to take that U.S. propaganda is not effective anymore. That the people are not buying that the United States have the best interest for people. So when people hear the Chinese response, when people hear Putin's response to the United States, and then they hear the United States response, they know they're full of shit. And that's a bad sign for the future of the West. Now, this was great coverage from the Gray Zone, and you can speak on this if you want as well. This is more coverage on the ICC. Max Blumenthal just released this yesterday, and it's a great article, how NATO states sponsored ICC prosecutors Putin arrest warrant. And I'll just read the bold subheadline. ICC Prosecutor General Karim Khan raised millions from NATO states by crafting an arrest warrant for Vladimir Putin while freezing investigations into well-documented United States and Israeli war crimes. Along the way, he won powerful friends in Washington, London, Kyiv, and Hollywood. So this is what I think a lot of leaders on the global stage is not going to stand for. I remember when the Human Rights Council were trying to condemn Russia's invasion, and what the Cuban representative said, we can't support this because you're going to create this weapon of hypocrisy that is born through corruption, as we've seen here. So you guys should check out that article. That's a great one there. Any final thoughts on the ICC, the hypocrisy coming from the West? Any final thoughts before we move on to our last topic of the day?
Yeah, no, I just think the ICC is just, I mean, it's entirely a joke at this point, because again, they're very biased as to who they're going to incriminate at this point. And just like a lot of the entities that are supposed to serve as beacons of justice, they have been led by the United States and the West and NATO to only go after the entities they approve of. And so then it loses any sort of credibility on the general sense, because not only does that insult the rest of the world, which, by the way, Europe and the United States think that the world revolves around them, right? That they think that they're the beautiful garden and everybody else is a jungle. Well, the rest of the jungle is really sick and tired of that, and everybody else is creating their own sort of self-reliance on each other. They're cooperating with each other after being forced to do so, and they've realized the strength is much greater. The amount of people and the amount of power and money that is to be held by BRICS countries, as more and more are joining, has already surpassed the G7 countries. So this is a point of no return here. They've realized they no longer need the West, and what we're seeing here is a shift. And I think for people like us, Nick, I think it's beautiful to see, because not just our background, but like the anti-imperialist aspect of it, of finally seeing people who have been really just getting the short end of the stick for decades and centuries, finally having a chance. And the West is so mad about peace in the Arab world. They're so mad about Africa really opening their arms to Russia and China, but rejecting the United States and Europe, because they know that with the others they might get a fair shot, they might get treated as equals. Because at the end of the day, what most of these countries want, and this is something Pasta and I always talk about, this is something I've seen in Latin America, what most people in countries want is literally to be respected and recognized as sovereign, independent countries, without somebody coming and telling them what to do, who to talk to, what to think. And if we can't, at minimal, as the United States, if the United States government can't minimally do that, then of course it's in their best interest to say, bye-bye, we're going to go somewhere else.